There you go.
April 23rd, 2019. So today, a topic that probably has bit me in the past, and that is when you are partnered up with another soul. And I had the expectation that I would make them number one in my life, and that I would be number one in their life. You know, reciprocal. And I'm not sure how realistic that was. And the last topic we had was about ego. And, you know, as I'll dive into this a little deeper, you know, later on as we go through this, my ego took, I think it took front and center for a while. And then as I'm aging and realizing, looking back, it was probably a big mistake in my expectation of where I was going to be in my partner's life. And so we can dive deeper into that, and it's going to pass it over to Sandra because we've sort of identified the topic.
Right.
And let's move forward.
Well, one of the reasons I thought this was important was because in the book Game Changer, we asked a question, and that question was, where do you see yourself in your partner's life? And so you had choices like number 1, number 2, number 3. Where do you place yourself? Okay. And so I've had some interesting conversations with different people, especially at the book signings and that type of thing, and I've seen some kind of different things happen with that. Is that, can you really expect to be number one? And I think, Michael, you said it, when you get married, there's just you and the other person, okay? And then if a child comes along, you as a man are not number one anymore.
No, and I think, you know, when I was young, in my 20s, early 20s, when I met and got married my first time, I think maybe at that point I was under the impression that I could be number one because, you know, there's no other kids, there's no other really anybody. You know, my partner at that time was in her late teens, early 20s, and we hadn't had a chance to come with a lot of other, you know, I guess past relationships and extra kids and on and on and on. It wasn't there. So if there ever was a time I think I could have been number one in my partner's life and vice versa, I think it was then, in my early 20s, and I was ready to commit. And so that's kind of how you go into the relationship, because after all, you're getting married and it's a big deal, and all these vows and church, and people come to see from miles around. And you go through life like that for, you know, a day or a week or a month, and then that first child comes along, and it's like, oh, that number one took a number 2 seat pretty quick. But it's your kid, so okay, you know, you have to do what you have to do, and you know, you realize that you go to work, and in my case, the wife was looking after our child, right? And then the second child comes, and now you're number 3, and the third child comes, and now you're number 4. So I think you learn in a hurry that number 1 may or may not be attainable.
Right. And so one of the things, even in the book, we have a chapter called "It's Not About You Anymore." Okay, and I think it's really important that, and I find this from my research and that type of thing, that most women want to get married, they want to have a baby, bum bum bum. Okay, so what they realize is that once they have that baby, it's not about them anymore. Okay. And the interesting thing is when you said about baggage and that type of thing, so they have 1 or 2 kids, then they get a divorce, they find somebody else, then they get it. So now we've got this blended family that's really complicated, and we did a video yesterday about ego and spirit. So how are these children that have mixed, all these different parents, how are these children maintaining a sense of self-identity and not just moving into ego between the ages of 2 to about 4? Okay, that's one of the questions that I have. And the next one, I had a friend of mine who will remain anonymous that had gone through a divorce, and we had this discussion because my way of how I perceive my world, and I have 3 children, and I have 5 grandchildren and 1 grandchild, okay, is number 1 is me. Number 2 is the divine. Number 3, I have to take care of myself, okay? And number 4, something I've realized is the family will always be there. So the bottom line is I have 3 grown children. Yes, I have grandchildren, but I'm not their parents. So I care about them, I do everything, but I entrust that the parent is going to be there, okay? So what I want, and so that's how I work, okay? And this is what somebody said, because they had gone through a divorce, and there was a woman that wanted them to marry. It's from a male. I'm just going to say hi. I'll call her Sarah. Wanted a deeper commitment to our relationship, and I said to her that. So this was a man going through a divorce, met this woman, and she wanted a deeper commitment. She didn't have any children, okay? He said, number 1, I had to look after my business to make money. Number 2, I needed to see what I needed to be healthy for me. So you need to have his health. Number 3, I had a number 1 son. Number 4, I had a number 2 son. Number 5, I had a number 3 son. And he said, she would have been, and he told her that, you would be number 6 on my list at that particular time. And I thought that wasn't a strong enough position to be in a relationship where she expected 100% commitment. And so I think that's really something to think about. Even if you yourself have no children and you're looking to be with somebody, or if you do have children, you're not going to get 100% commitment, and nobody's going to give you, and you can't really give anybody else 100% commitment. I think you're fooling yourself. For me, number 1, I come in alone, I leave alone, okay? And I was a little bit different because I spent about 25 years living on my own. I had relationships, did not live with anyone other than me, okay? So for me, being alone and being able to stand on my own 2 feet and walk with the divine, down divine with spirit, is really important. And even my older adult children now know that. They learned when they were very, very young that they stood on their own 2 feet, and they allowed me to just be what I had to be, because I had a purpose. I came down here with purpose. And we really wanted to say this because in the book we did say that, and I don't want anybody to think that you are going to be number 1. You've got to be number 1 in your own eyes, and you've got to, if you get in a relationship, you've got to realize that you've got to give some stuff up. But if it's all about the other person, why would you be in a relationship? That would be my question to you. If they are that egocentric and it's all about them, it's all about their family, it's all about everything, why would you want it? Why not just stay single and just do what you want to do? I don't understand that. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, just an example for me, when I came out of my marriage after 30 years, and within, 6 months, I was starting another relationship with a woman who had 4 grown children from 18 to 30. And I guess I was trying to replay, or my coming out of high school, where I could be number 1 in a person's life again, start over. And my naivety, and that's where probably my ego kicked in too, right? Where I said, well, I should be number 1, and I'm gonna, I was trying to replace what I'd lost. And I think now, as I look back at that, that was a constant struggle, because she had 4 children and aunts and a mother and so on, everybody, all the important people in her life. And I could never figure out why I couldn't be number one in her life. I was willing to give her that commitment, but perhaps I wasn't even. I just thought I was. And it didn't work out. It was a constant source of struggle. Years later now, I look back and I think, it was just my ego.
Right.
I figured that's what was supposed to be. That's what I wanted, and darn it, I was going to get it. And then when that didn't happen, I realized now it could never have happened.
And that's
at best, I would have been number 6 in her life behind a lot of other things, and that's the reality of it. So to go into it with the expectation of being number 1, that's just your ego talking, and you're not looking at it clear. And so make sense of that if that's what you think, because it's probably not going to happen.
Right. And so the bottom line is, you had an expectation of her, but you had your own family.
Absolutely.
That was important.
Yeah.
So your family was more important than her or her family.
Oh, they were a constant source of contention for sure, because my children were, roughly the same age as hers, and they were growing, and a constant source of unacceptance, I guess, and then, well, of course, you want to stick up for your own kid a little bit, and you kind of don't want theirs in the way, and you can't figure out why they don't see it the same way, and you probably should, right? You should probably figure. It's just the ego getting in the way. So now it's like, I understand my relationship first is with myself, and that's the stage in life that I'm at, pursuing my spirituality, my connection to spirit, and my family will always be there. It's just the way it is. I'll be a father until I die. Women can come and go in your life, and your kids just never will. I'll always be their dad, right?
Yeah.
And always be there if they ever needed something, if they really did, right?
Yeah.
And I know my parents would do the same for me, and I'm sure anybody watching that has kids would do, similar thought process, right?
Yeah. And so I could really say the same thing. Men can come and go in my life. Okay, but the bottom line is I'm there for myself, my spirituality, and if they do need me. So this is...
Well, let's face it, Sandra, men have come and gone in your life, and women have come and gone in my life.
Well, yeah.
That's the truth, right? And many people watching will be able to say the same thing.
Exactly. But what I'm hoping that people will do with this ego thing, and with how they're raising children, and when the ego plays in, and how we don't have a bunch of spoiled, egotistical brats that are entitled and pampered, and we have a big challenge with it in the world right now, is that maybe you will take a look at your lives, and if you are in a relationship and a blended family, you better do some thinking, because the blended family, that person that is the parent to that one child, that's their child. They will not be that same parent to if there is a biological mom and dad. It's just
and the new person in your life most likely will not see that child as their own.
No.
It's just not quite the same as the biological parent I'm going to say in a high percentage of cases.
Right.
And perhaps if you find you get into a relationship with a very young child, perhaps you can, more or less raise that child as your own. But as they get older and they have their own identity, for you to go in there and think you're going to be number 1, boy, I don't know. I'd look close at that if that was your expectation. It'll save you a lot of grief.
So we'll always give a prize with each one, and I think this one is really good because it just I kind of like to create it as we go along. So we started out with your where are you in a relationship, what's your place, 1, 5, 3, 2, whatever. Okay, and so what I do want to say, it's not about the biological family, okay, because there's not a lot of them out there anymore. We're looking at a lot of blended families. So anybody that has the guts to get a hold of us, subscribe to the channel, and say that they are having maybe a challenge, okay, in a blended family, and the very first thing you want to do is see how compatible you are as a male and female in that relationship, okay? So if you want to share, and we would share it in one of our videos, we wouldn't use your name, but you would win a prize to look at a compatibility.
And the interesting thing is the compatibility can be of your choice between you and your partner, or perhaps even you and your partner's child, to see what role you would play in each other's life.
Yeah.
And how you each see each other, right? Which could be some pretty important information.
Right.
Because they're really detailed and they're really accurate.
Yeah. Because we are in physical form, but we are energetic and spiritual beings, number one. Number two, we live on this earth plane, but the frequencies are changing and we're moving. And I am going to finish this with the earth resonance, you can check it out, is 7.38 hertz. It is now up to over 130, I think. So all you have to do is look at the challenges that are in the world, because we're going through a huge transformation. That same transformation people are going within. And so lightning is striking and awakening you, because they want you to become awake to, which is being more conscious. So it's like getting your head out of the sand, okay, and seeing what's real. And so that you can come to grips and fulfill your potential as to why you're here. Okay, that's basically what it's about. And if you can't fulfill your potential, how do you figure you're going to help your children fulfill their potential? And that's a big thing right now in the divorce courts and in the justice system. Okay, so but have some fun with it. Think about it. Think about it. Maybe you want to win a prize. We can look at it. And if there is a topic that you would like to have discussed, put it in the comments and we'll go back to you. Anything else?
Well, there might even be somebody out there that wants to sort of join us on an interview or a podcast or a Zoom or whatever.
Right.
And you might have something interesting to say. And
yeah.
As we create an audience, it's going to be real people, you know, as they move through life gracefully.
Right, exactly.
We're trying to find ways to connect spiritually, to raise our families in a loving and safe environment, become good, you know, raise our own personal bar a little bit. Each of us did that, even when nobody was watching. If we just kind of lived with a little bit of truth and fairness, and we saw the world that way, right? And we each raised our bar just a tiny little bit, held ourselves there. Boy, it would make a nicer place to live.
That's right.
So we can do this together. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you think if that's a good idea, we'll do it with Zoom. That'll be the best one, I think, for right now. Anyway, so have a super day. I think it's Earth Day today, or it was yesterday. Many blessings.